Good afternoon, Mr. Ryan. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, what's happening, Mike? How are you?
Doing well, man. It's been a good week. Last time we were talking, we kind of discussed real estate as a in-game asset, and towards the end of that, we had mentioned that it'd be good to talk about reverse mortgages and when they're appropriate, for people to use and what the benefits are of them.
Yeah, reverse is it's something in my opinion that's sort of underutilized, and I think the reason why is there's a weird stigma to it. Not a lot of people understand it, and so they're worried about, if I do a reverse mortgage, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my house, or my family's not going to get anything, or
Yeah,
I'm giving my home to the bank. Like, why the hell would I do that?
yeah,
And it would be good for us to kind of talk about maybe some of those myths, some of the concerns that we hear very often, just to help whoever's on the audience that potentially may want to know a little bit more about reverse. Maybe you can learn a little something on this quick call. But
yeah.
yeah, let's start off. I mean, what do you on your side? What do you hear most often? From people when you mention reverse?
Yeah, so you touched on, one of the biggest ones is like, well, I have the house and I don't owe anything on it. Why would I take another loan out on the house, this late in life? And, ultimately it could end up foreclosing. And they just don't
Right.
understand the full benefit and what it's actually intended to be used for, right?
Yeah. So the person who would consider a reverse mortgage. So for one, you got to be at least 62 years old,
Hmm.
and it's not going to be for everybody. You and I aren't there yet. We can't do a reverse mortgage. If we could, I would, but we can't. So
Yeah,
when we get to that age, we'll be able to kind of utilize a program like this. But this is for somebody maybe who's got to that retirement age, and they're noticing that life is getting just a little bit more expensive. Maybe they were a little underfunded on their retirement. And so all of a sudden, this is a very common problem.
hmm,
You have a certain amount of fixed income that's coming in, but your expenses are no longer fixed. So it's not like Edison, the gas company, the food, the grocery store. None of those folks are fixing the cost for you when you're retired, but your income stops growing. Maybe it grows nominally with like a little bit of a cost of living adjustment, but that's really, really minimal. It doesn't offset our lifestyle. And
yeah,
so what we typically see is people get to that place and they get uncomfortable
yeah,
and they start to scale back. And so they're no longer driving anywhere. They want to go visit, but they can't because it's too expensive. They're layering up with 15 different layers of clothing to keep warm because they don't want to run their heater because the gas prices are too high. You
yeah.
name it. It gets really uncomfortable and it's no way to really live.
No,
So the reverse mortgage, if you think about it, whether you have a loan on your property, maybe you paid it off, or maybe you have a small loan on it, you have assets. Now, if you don't have assets, so you don't have any equity within the reverse,
hmm,
then this isn't going to work for you. But if you have a good equity position, let's say at least half of your home's value is what you would owe,
hmm,
then a reverse is something to consider. And what happens is now you're still applying a mortgage, right? Let's say we have a regular first mortgage. Every month we make our payment to that bank.
yep,
We're switching it now to a reverse mortgage. There's still a mortgage. So instead of writing a check from it, our equity is going to pay it,
hmm,
right? That's how you have to kind of think about it. So our equity is actually going to pay that particular mortgage for us instead of us coming out of our bank account. So I want you to envision two buckets,
yep,
right? This side over here is your checking and savings,
hmm,
or retirement, IRAs, whatever it is.
yep,
This side's your home's equity.
yep,
Right now, if you have a regular mortgage, you're writing out of this bucket to
hmm,
pay your your home payment. You're going to stop that and you're going to pull from this bucket. This
hmm,
is your equity position to pay your home. You're
yeah,
still making a mortgage payment. You're just paying it out of this pile of assets that you have, this home's equity.
yeah,
If you think about it that way, it's not as scary. The other thing that comes up all the time is what the heck happens if I pass away, or
yep,
if I'm married and my spouse passes away? Are they going to kick me out? Does the bank own my property? These are things that we have to explain to people because there's a lot of myths about it. And especially if you go on a tangent online, you'll find whatever you're looking for. You're going to find the stuff that freaks you out and scares you. But the reality is, if you're married,
hmm,
your spouse passes,
hmm,
stay in the property.
yeah,
If you both pass or you both no longer live in the property, then there's a chance now we have to do something with the property. We either the heirs need to sell it,
hmm,
they need to pay it off and take it over in their name,
yep,
refinance it into their name. But there's an event now that if if the two people, let's say you're married, again, two people no longer, both of them no longer live in the property, that's when that event happens. And there's plenty of time. There's a lot of notice. We do counseling with not only the homeowner, but also the executor of their estate to make sure that they know when that time happens, whether it's person leaving their home, going to a nursing facility or whatever. We want to make sure that they understand what their role and responsibility is as the executor.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is that they're not going to lose a home's equity position. They still get to sell it. In that instance where you had a forward mortgage and you had your reverse, two mortgages, right? Somebody passes away, there's debt to be paid, so they have to sell the house to pay this off. Same thing happens over here on reverse.
Yeah.
So it's no different.
No.
The bank doesn't want the house. The bank wants to get paid their equity or their principal balance. That's all that they want.
Correct.
And so that's the situation that a lot of people are most concerned about.
Well, so and right now, like a benefit would be because you had said like you've got your checking account and your equity account in your house, right? And you usually pay, out of your checking into your mortgage to pay down the equity on that. But once you have enough equity and once you reach that age, right, and your checking account, you're no longer getting a paycheck because you've stopped working, right? You might be getting Social Security or pension or whatever, right? Draws on your 401k. But if you don't have those options and the money is coming out of the mortgage, right, that you've been paying into and going into your checking account, right, your shelter expense is covered, right? But now you're getting that extra cash and you can use that to offset the increase in bills that, like you said, Edison, your utilities, your food, travel expenses, be it vacation or just, Uber or a bus to get to wherever you need to go, right? And I think that a lot of people don't plan that all the way through, and they don't realize that the house can be used that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that get to that stage, in this account over here, checking savings assets are really fairly dry, or they start to get to a level where it's somewhat concerning. They pass away. We realize that they lived maybe super conservative because they saw how quickly that money was drawing down and they were really worried about it. But they left hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in home's equity. The reality is that money could have actually been used to make their quality of life a little bit better. And really it's theirs, right? I mean, you spent your life either making good decisions to buy a house and pay down the mortgage and create the equity position anyways.
Yeah.
So then when you no longer work or when you get to that age, that equity is going to take care of the house. It's going to be sort of self-serving, right? I mean, essentially that's all you're trying to do.
Yeah. No,
well, I'll give you one tip here. And this is something that a lot of people ask is they go, what happens? So I get it. My mortgage is now being paid from the equity, but that means my mortgage is growing. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're not making a physical payment to pay it down. It's actually, it's going to increase slowly because you're borrowing against the equity. So what happens now if the home is worth less than what I owe? And that's a real thing. It's designed in a way from day one to leave so much equity that you more than likely aren't going to get there.
Yeah.
But let's say that somebody is 62 years old on the day. They had 50% equity. They live to 130 years old. They make the news, and all of a sudden the news is like, did you realize that they owe way more on their house than, than what the home's worth? Because they've really drawn that thing up. And during that time, there was a recession and the house values crashed and all this stuff, right? Like worst possible case scenario. What happens is when that person, well, first off, if they're staying in the property, nothing happens. The bank doesn't do anything.
No risk.
Second of all, because these are HUD homes, okay? HUD is the same entity that sponsors FHA loans, okay? So it's a mortgage insurance backed company. You get a reverse mortgage, part of what you pay is a HUD fee. You're paying actually a mortgage insurance premium. All of the reverses that are done every year have that mortgage insurance premium that's paid, so that there's a fund that's set up for that exact event. They don't ever want to get there, but that's how the program protects itself.
Yeah.
If that person was to pass away and there's a negative position on the home, the heirs have two choices. They can hand over the keys, just like somebody did on a lease on their car, and they owe too much, right? They just, here you go, take the house, we're out of here. Non-recourse loan, so they don't go after any remaining assets that the person had left behind, and they're not going to go after the estate for anything. So that's one thing that people forget about. But here's another hack that most people don't know. The heirs have the option to buy the home back from the bank at 95% of what the home's actually worth. So let's say that home got wiped out. Equity just got demolished. The economy's crazy. The housing prices just rolled back to, 2008 levels and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
But you owe a whole bunch of money on it. It may be a really good deal for that family to buy that home back at 95% of the appraised value, because the appraised value at that time is trash.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. So there's an option to hand back the keys or buy it at 95%. And they only give that option to the estate, to the family. So it's not out there for other investors to jump in and get it and that sort of thing. So interesting things that kind of happen on there. And then when we don't know enough about it, we get really, really worried about, what would happen. I don't want to leave my son or my daughter, with this gigantic burden or some massive debt. That's not actually going to happen. There's no way that there's components that are built into the system to not allow that to happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, those are things that most people don't know about, and they just, because mainstream gives it kind of a negative connotation with everything that we started the video off with on why you shouldn't do it, right? They don't know about those benefits. But you're right. I mean, imagine right now that house is worth 500 grand, right? And they only owed $100,000 on it or whatever. So they're under their thing and they're 62, and they start drawing and they end up owing 700,000 on it, right? And like you said, worst case scenario, they outlived what they were supposed to. Market crashes, the house is now worth 200,000, right? The family can then come in and buy it at 190, right? So your parents or grandparents' house that was worth 500,000, and then they got all of their money and then some out of, you get the opportunity, the first right of refusal to buy that house at 190. Like that's a win-win-win. Like as long as you plan for that, right? And everyone's made aware of the options and reminded of them, because I'm sure they'll forget later on down the road. But yeah, it's a great program. And again, I think it's way underutilized and totally misunderstood.
Yeah, it's part of the counseling that we do. So not only, the person getting the loan, but also the heirs, whoever's involved on that, they understand those options. So we highlight what happens when that person no longer lives there, so they understand exactly what their role and responsibility is in this, and then what their options are, moving into it. But like you said, there's such a good safety net that's built into the program to make sure that somebody's not leaving, just an absolute ton of debt to somebody else in a black swan worst case event.
Yeah.
Which is what most people are worried about. We always try to, we personally underwrite our risk to the worst possible thing that can actually happen to us. So it's an amazing program for that. But there's also, not just on the refi, you can use it as a purchase. You want to go down that path? Because there's some real benefits on the purchase side.
Perfect. So again, now the buyer doesn't own the property. They're going, they're 65, right? And they're going to purchase another home. You're saying that they can use a reverse mortgage to purchase the property. Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's a scenario, and we actually walked through this with a client here recently. They were in a position where they were downsizing. So they had a really strong equity position, probably, low seven figure, $1 million, $1.2 million. They were going to walk away with from another home. And they wanted to downsize to a property. It was a little bit more reasonable. It was maybe going to be like 550 to 600,000. So the idea was take that $1.2 million, buy the home cash. And, we asked, how everything else looked. They were probably they were heavy on real estate asset and equity, but really short in other assets. Not a whole lot. There was some money in there, but it wasn't nearly the amount of the mountain that they had built up from equity. So instead of them buying that house cash, we said, well, what if you bought that home that's 600 grand with a reverse mortgage? Maybe you got to bring in, 200 or 300 to get the reverse mortgage started, but then there's no more payments, right? You're gonna do one and done on that versus having to spend the entire 600 to get in the door. And in both scenarios, reverse mortgage or paying cash for it, the monthly that they would have to contribute, and this happened to be a condo, was going to be property taxes, HOA, and insurance. So they still have those expenses. What we're getting rid of, either in a cash event where we just pay cash for the house, or the reverse, is the traditional principal and interest part of the payment, right? So versus paying all cash. They decided to go reverse. The reverse mortgage now allows them to hold on and retain, instead of $600,000, they can retain, let's say, 300 or 350 of that, depending on age.
Mhm.
They get to hold on to some of that extra capital. Now they got to go back to their financial planner, who parked that in a place where it was earning interest, it was earning enough interest. It was actually offsetting the interest that was being charged on the reverse mortgage.
Mhm.
But something happens, their car breaks down, AC fails on the house,
Yeah.
water leak, you name it, stuff happens, right?
Life.
They get to pull off of that uh, investment that they had, or the reverse mortgage has a line of credit that's established, and that line of credit grows over time. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing. You pay for your reverse mortgage from day one.
Mhm.
As your home equity expands, your equity line, the availability of how much you can, not only are you not making the mortgage payment yourself, you can actually tap into some of that equity. It's built into the system. You do not have to go get a HELOC. You don't have to refinance. So something happens on that house,
Yeah.
pull it from the house. Let the house take care of the house, right? So
For sure.
we were able to show them that. And it was like from day one, they had access to, 50K worth of line of credit. And it, like the 5 and 10 year mark, it was like 150, 180,000. So fast forward, now they want to remodel their kitchen or their bathroom. Instead of drawing off the investment account that's earning interest,
Mhm.
just let the house take care of it. Pull off the line of credit. You're okay,
For
right?
sure.
Still enough equity there. It's all good.
Well,
And
and there's no risk, right?
there's
Because
no risk.
they're not going to
Right.
foreclose on you. There's a limit on that line of credit that you can pull,
Correct.
but you can pull it all, and you won't be making a payment to that like you would a normal line of credit, right? So you don't have
Look-
overhead. And if the house, like, if your loan goes way above what the home is worth and you pass away, either, turn it back in, give the keys back, or if it plummeted, family member can come in and buy it at 95% of what it's currently worth, not what it's owed.
Correct. And remember, on that line of credit component of the reverse mortgage, that money that you pull in, whether it's one big chunk or it's a little bit of monthly that you're trying to draw down on,
Mhm.
that money is tax-free. So think about it. If the stock market's down and you don't want to pull as aggressively from your 401k,
Yep.
because now you're selling those shares at a lower value, you just put a pause on that. Take the very minimum on those distributions, pull from the line of credit tax-free.
Yeah.
So financial planners love these kind of scenarios. They love reverse mortgage, but they oftentimes won't suggest them because they're not allowed to. They can't tell you to go get debt and live off of that. But if you ask them off the side, they go, oh yeah, 100%. They're like, it totally makes sense because it preserves the asset that they're trying to help grow over time.
Yeah.
So it really serves them to keep that money and have you not draw down on it as much, because they can help you grow more over there
Mhm.
and use the home to support the home itself.
Definitely. Okay, awesome, man. I think that covers it a lot, and I hope that is really helpful to people out there that are nearing the age or already of age to qualify for the reverse mortgage. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. It really is a great program and a great opportunity when used correctly. For people that do qualify.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks.